Welcome to the Forever Classic Podcast, the show seeking enlightenment through video games, film, and other geek culture. I'm Alex McCumbers. Today, here, as usual, I have Mr. Zack Snyder.
Hey, everybody.
And the indomitable Joe Seamson.
That's me! Like a snowman?
How's it going, guys?
No, that's Abominable.
Yeah, the indomitable snowman.
That's not it.
He can't be defeated.
I'm like a weird Yeti variant.
So what's up, guys? Is everything good?
I was sick yesterday.
That sucks.
Yeah, it does. Because I was looking forward to a day of like cleaning and playing video games, and none of that happened. But
yeah, that's kind of how I spent Sunday, because it was just so damn cold over here. So we just kind of like stayed in bed watching The Office.
Luckily, though,
so nice.
I felt better by the evening. But then I had slept all day, so I was up till 2:30 and then got 5 hours of sleep before going to work. So I'm probably going to try and go to bed early tonight. But other than that, pretty good. Reading a book for the first time in a while.
Them books are something, ain't they?
They got words.
Wow.
Words.
I like to read. That's been kind of my, like, either I sit down late at night and turn on the PlayStation because I have it hooked up in the bedroom currently, or read a book or throw on some manga on my phone or something, and that's all a fine enough way to slow down. But hey, we got a thing that we like to run here at Forever Classic, and things are starting to coalesce into a little bit more typical of a media outlet. So Joe, why don't you tell us about our new email?
All right. We've got a new email address. For those of you who have been following us for a while, you may know a way to contact us or have direct contact. But if you're just joining us and have a question for us or a request or just want to tell us that we're doing good, you can reach us at contact@foreverclassicgames.com. That's contact, CONTACT, at foreverclassicgames.com. And while you're at it, you can check out our website at foreverclassicgames.com. And if you read an article or like what we're doing here, you can tip individual writers or go and support us on Patreon. There are links all over the place for that sort of thing. And if you like what we're doing, you can show support monetarily, but just listening and visiting the website does a ton. And engaging with us on social media or emailing us shows us that we're doing the right stuff. So,
and right now I think it's a really important time to be supporting of your fellow journalists and media outlets, because there's been a lot of layoffs and it's very sad.
Yes,
and
a lot of them happened in like a week period.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a second week.
7 or 8 outlets lost like 20% of their people overnight or something. Like, it was ridiculous.
And meanwhile, while we're not a paid outlet, our team grew this last month, so that was like kind of cool.
Well, I mean, we haven't added anybody like brand new, but
no, but I mean,
really
like,
awesome people.
And like the last month, things really started, like the team really started coming together and rolling, I think, in a more like cohesive way. Leading up to this, I think, was just sort of figuring that all out. But
starting that's why we've done a lot of like organization stuff at the end of the year, beginning of the year. We've got some cool stuff planned. Always, it's kind of like trying to find the time to do that kind of thing and doing it in the proper way. So that's the current challenge. But for now, I mean, there's some cool stuff on the site. Definitely check out some of those reviews and news.
For sure. And we are 3 geeky nerds who love many different things, and sometimes the topic of an individual episode just cannot contain, well, everything we're excited about. So, current geeking. One thing that we are currently geeking out about. And we'll start with you, Mr. Zack Snyder.
Not that one.
Not that one.
No, that's
apparently that one's got a new movie.
That's director.
Oh, yeah,
Zack Snyder. Not Mr.
I mean, I've directed stage stuff.
That counts. This is the play. You just keep getting director credits in any way possible. That way you can say you are director Zack Snyder.
Oh my
god.
And then you show up and they're like, I feel like I thought he looked different. And you're like, nope, I'm Zack Snyder. Here it is on my driver's license. And they're like, well, he's not wrong.
Starts doing this, creates the most absolutely clusterfuck mess ever.
Subreddit, technically the truth.
Technically. But yeah.
What do you mean the grips can't be in the movie?
So for me, I mean, the big thing that we've been doing the past like week has been just a couple of animes. So it's been we've been catching up on Bad Batch and Dan Maki season 4, which has been awesome.
What is Dan Maki for?
Damaki is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon? And it's
horny.
A little bit, but it's like really dark right now. Like not made in Abyss dark, but it got like dark and heavy really fast. But so Damaki follows this like city where these gods have come down from whatever celestial body thing that they lived in to live as humans. And they can still provide blessings, and they build these like families out of people who follow these gods as they live in human form. And they go and they try to conquer this dungeon that Oranos, one of the original gods, he's like the first one to come down. His whole deal is he doesn't do like a family, he just uses all of his power to keep the dungeon from spilling monsters out. So he just like lives under this guild the whole time, just for that reason. And he's kind of like, he seems like a bad guy, but might be a good guy, and nobody has a fucking clue because he's not on screen much and he sounds pretty nasty. He's grumpy. But anyway, all that aside from the point, but they go down, and it's kind of like an RPG adventure with lots more like sad and horny pieces. Like a lot less than you'd think, but it's got plenty of fan service, just like anything else. But it's not like always in your face about it, because it actually follows like a fairly decent story. But it's like all these gods from all these pantheons, and they're just mortal. So like, I think in season 2 or 3, there's like a fight where some of the gods get into their families get into a big fight, and at one point, one of the families kill one of the gods, and they reascend, and they can't come back after that. They're just they cannot return to the mortal coil, so that family is essentially destroyed when that happens, because that family can't receive blessings or anything anymore. So they get absorbed into other gods' families or don't. But it's kind of cool. Follows Bel, who's question mark grandson of Zeus, who's absent in the whole thing.
Didn't know that.
There you go.
I've seen the first like season or 2 of this, and I've seen like there's a game that came out recently that got some attention in the anime game community. I don't think it was very good, but people like that show a lot.
Sounds like it has some Sword Art Online vibes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like a nice flow. It's fun. Like it's very funny to watch. Like there's lots of silly moments, but then like it has like a pretty decent story that's a little funky at first because there's lots of world building for like something brand new as it was.
Right.
And like without completely spilling the beans every time it goes into something, it has to like skirt around it and go on like a tiny adventure. But it all follows basically an overall story. So it starts off pretty lighthearted and funny, and like kind of coming of age and weird battles and extra coming of age. And then like this season's like dark. People are losing arms, people are being cut in half and blown up, and like you get to see like the blood spatter. Even people that have like characters that aren't like main characters, but you've seen them everywhere, have been absolutely just like killed beyond like you can't come back.
I think this might be one of those, because there for a while, and I think this is still going on, a lot of these like light novel series that get popular in Japan, so they're just books, right? They're like serialized books, like Pulp Fiction, like we would have.
Yeah.
A lot of those are getting anime adaptations, and I believe this is one of those. And Sword Art was one too.
I want to say so. There's a lot of really good stuff that's been like sliding from light novel into like webtoon, like manga, manhwa space, and those things are now also starting to slide into anime space, which is great because some of the things will benefit strongly from it.
That's a good point. It's not just light novels and manga. Like, we consider most of the time, you know, starts as a manga, goes a year or 2, picks up an anime adaptation. And nowadays, like, it can come from a light novel, it can come from, like, a card game, a random mobile game, or some of these other, like, different types of comics. So it's interesting to see a lot of studios recognizing that animation is so, like, worthwhile and valuable, and where they're finding those inspirations.
Yeah, because there's some really good shit out there that people don't do anything with. And there's some stuff that's, like, good, but could be so much better, like, animated. Because it's, again, when I'll talk, like, animation adaptations, is filling in that, like, in-between that, like, needs it, but not, like, filling in the shit that doesn't need it. So, like, you know, for example, like, Bleach Blood War arc. It's great just taking it straight from paper to there, but you can add in some more emphasis in scenes without going like full Dragon Ball Z, like power up for 5 fucking episodes and still hit home with some more.
What I like about that in particular is they're doing a lot of really interesting animation styles for various fights. So, I mean, we just saw the Kenpachi versus, I think, Ushida in the anime, because I think it's on hiatus again. But it was a really incredible fight with a lot of great music, and obviously you don't get that out of the manga.
Has he got his Zanpakuto yet now?
No, I don't think so. He fought the former master, and that was a whole thing. And I forget where they left off. Like, yeah, maybe that's where they ended up, is Ichigo got a new sword of some sort.
Oh, yeah, Ichigo got his actual Zanpakuto.
Yeah, after going to, bathhouses and the whatever's above the Serite. Like, the world building in that in particular is like, hey, do you like factions and ranks? Because we got them.
Yeah, you like factions and ranks? You like old factions that were absolute assholes and are still in charge but completely absent? We've got a lot of that for you.
Yep.
Well, building off of this, like, my current geeking is also anime. And there is currently like a reboot or retelling of Trigun happening called Trigun Stampede. And I am thoroughly enjoying it so far. There are some sick moments in that show. And I've seen the original Trigun. I found it to be okay. But I know a lot of people love it. But as someone who is kind of going into this thinking, oh, the first one was fine, I'm finding this to be so much more engaging. And I am making a comparison between Full Metal Alchemist and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Like, that's the leap for me in terms of quality of storytelling and animation and things like that. I don't have any idea what the overall reception of this is. Everyone else could possibly be hating this right now. I just don't see how you could. I am thoroughly enjoying it.
It's a fairly mixed bag, I think. Like, people are really into the very dynamic action scenes and stuff. And generally it's a different take on the story. It charts its own path. I've seen, I think, 3 or 4 episodes by now. And I know the one you were talking about a while back where you're like, man, once it hits a certain episode, it's scary.
Yeah, there's a couple of moments where I was like,
shows up.
And they introduce him early instead of way late. And I think that's effective.
Right.
And it made me think of the witch in Banjo-Kazooie. You hate that witch because she's annoying you the whole game. Right. And rather than just like, oh, you're making your way up to the boss that you never see until then. Like, I understand that they made some changes story-wise and character-wise. But I'm finding these new versions of the characters to have just so much more depth and nuance as characters. Whereas in the original, they are very, like, shonen trope.
Right.
Which there's nothing wrong against that. Like, there's a place for it. And when I'm in the right mood, love me some shonen trope. But I also am just, like, more engaged with this story this time around because of the changes they made. And so for me personally, it's working.
It's really cool. I'm excited to see how the dub goes because I believe Johnny Yong Bosch was confirmed to be coming back as Vash.
Oh, nifty.
Pretty certain. So that'll be cool. A lot of these shows like it and Chainsaw Man, the dub would hit like a couple weeks after the subbed episode. And that seems to be the trend with this as well on Hulu. So we'll see how well it does. But I think at the end of the day, 3D animation is fine now.
I think in a lot of cases, it's quite good. And in places where it blends is even better.
Yeah, I think we've escaped that, like, uncanny valley low. I mean, I'm sure we're going to see examples of it again, but, like, I want Berserk to be revisited now because some of that anime was just so bad.
Oh,
well, it's just, like, so stiff and rigid.
Right.
Up until recently.
And that is the exact opposite of what we get in Trigun.
Yeah,
and
Trigun is it's so fluid and like dynamic and has that like that just that spice that you want in it and like that is so anime. And I think some of it sparks from Into the Spider-Verse a few years ago. That launched so much development in converting 3D to a more 2D fluid art style. And mixing those mediums of even drawing frames over the model to sort of push it into where it needed to be. And I think it's totally working in Trigun. Whether or not you're enjoying it, I think it's hard to argue that the animation is a massive improvement and one of the best examples of CG or 3D anime out there.
It's really, really solid. The last comparison I want to make to Trigun is it's very similar to Guilty Gear Strive. And so I wonder if there's some crossover between them and Arc System Works.
Could be.
Or if they're just inspired by, like, it's very similar to what we see in Guilty Gear.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a buddy of mine who Trigun is his favorite anime of all time. He has I don't remember which voice actor it is, but his DVD copy of the first couple of episodes is signed. And I managed to help him pick up the rest of the series on DVD because I was at a garage sale and they were selling discs for like $1 a piece. And I'm like, hey, do you want the rest of Trigun for like $8? And he's like, yeah. And like I picked up like a bunch of old samurai movies because I was on a kick for that, and it was cool to just like garage sales never have that kind of stuff in them, so it was cool to see
especially
it.
in Minnesota.
Right, people in Minnesota just hang on to their crap forever, and you have to wait for someone to die and do an estate sale to get anything cool.
Garage sales are the jam. That's where I got my whole collection of the R.A. Salvatore stuff. I went to a random yard sale while I was in Buchanan to play Magic with Tanner, Skinny Tanner, and fucking this guy was like, yeah, he's like, I bought my wife a Kindle, so she bought all of her books on it instead, so that she had everything in one spot, always on hand, so she could reread whatever she wanted. She's getting rid of all the books, so I bought 3 cardboard boxes, like moving size boxes full of books, and they were like all D&D, like Forgotten Realms related stuff. It was like almost the entire R.A. Salvatore library for like $20.
That's awesome.
Hell yeah, man! That's awesome.
Yeah, I was like.
I've read most of those.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to my buddy's response to Trigun Stampede.
Yeah,
to see what he thinks, because it's like his favorite. So like, I hope he likes it, because then we can talk about it together. But if he hates it, I'll be like, oh well, you still have the original.
Regardless, I was kind of on it until you were like, no, it's actually really good, and so I started watching it. I was like, okay,
I don't know what triggered me to watch it, because like I said, I was kind of about Trigun generally. But then I saw a clip, and someone on Twitter recommended check out this clip or whatever, and I was like, okay, I'll watch the first episode, and I loved the first episode, especially like the animation stuff, and I've just kept picking up the episodes every week. So, but Alex, what do you wrap up this current geeking before we head into our topic?
So I wrapped up God of War Ragnarok, which is an incredible experience that I can't recommend enough. It's wild, man. Like how much Santa Monica Studio have developed Kratos and his entire cast of characters to be just incredibly deep and worthwhile and like carefully structured. And it's like every single line of dialogue makes sense in the context of what's going on. And I don't know how they did that. Like, it seems like an impossibility to me. Every quest is cool. There's lots of collectible stuff. Some of it's like, there's definitely tasks on my to-do list in God of War where I'm like, I don't know if I feel like doing that. So it gets a little tedious in the end. But as far as the core experience, man, like, it is an incredible just feat. Like, it's so impressive. What I really appreciate about it most is the fact that if you've played previous God of War games, there's something in there for you. If you're like, man, I really like the PSP one where he had Deimos' brother or whatever, like, they talk about that. Like, that is an event that is discussed, and like,
that's cool.
Kratos considers and bounces it off like what's going on currently, tries to relate to characters who are having similar issues with things that happened in his past. It's crazy.
That's really cool. I'm not putting as much time into it as I am the other main game I've been playing lately, but definitely been putting time back into it again now that I've sort of settled into what 2023 is for me, which is no new games. I'm just playing what I've got. And so at the top of the list was wrapping up God of War Ragnarok, and then Persona 5. Persona 5 has been my like daily 30 minutes to an hour, and then God of War has been like, all right, I've got 4 hours, let's sit down and just like experience something.
And you're going to need that too. It's like a 40-50 hour game.
Yeah,
I specifically took my time and looked at all the environments and listened to the dialogue and really like tried to immerse myself in it. And it was really fun like that, and it took forever.
Yeah, because it feels so meaty when you play it, I don't want to just play it for 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I go, I should go to bed in like 30 minutes, I'm just going to pick up Persona 5. Like
now,
I could just...
now that I'm in the end game, that's a little better, because there for a while it was like, well, I might as well go fight a berserker or whatever and tick that off my list.
Right.
But now I've killed all the optional bosses, including the 2 really hard ones, and those were tough challenges. Like I really had to learn that combat system, and like even on the easiest difficulty, it's hard. And I really struggled with trying to figure out how the system works. It's a little complex for my taste, but it worked out. And it's really complex and interesting, and
that's awesome.
The physicality is really good.
Nice job.
It's a cool game.
Yeah, and it's probably good that I'm putting more regular time into Persona 5, because that's like a 120-hour game.
Most of it's just kind of reading. I mean, if you skip out all on that stuff, it's not a long game. It's just there's so much writing.
Right. And I want to read it, though, because I am compelled by what it has to say. It just takes time.
I always say treat Persona like you would a teen drama or something. If you're into watching things like True Blood or Degrassi or, whatever, like that's kind of what Persona is, except for it's anime and Power Rangers kind of.
Yeah. But we don't need to dig into Persona. I've already had my one. But if anything else you need to say about God of War?
I think it's extremely worthwhile. And if you haven't played the other God of War games, maybe consider it if you have the time. A lot of them are fairly easy to find if you have a PS3 or an emulator or whatever. But at the end of the day, just playing the 2018 God of War and God of War Ragnarok, that is a fantastic 3-month period if you're a PlayStation 5 owner or a PS4 owner.
Very cool. And that brings us to our main topic of tonight's episode, or today's episode, or whatever. Whenever you're listening to this, if it's breakfast, ignore what I said. But... and you probably already know what the topic is, because the name of the episode is probably what the topic is. But our favorite gaming-inspired things. So this is a pretty open for interpretation topic. But not the games themselves, or not what inspired the games themselves, but what was inspired by the games. This can include, I know there are some games that have inspired entire new soundtracks, or fan mods, or... fan-made sequels or artwork or whatever the case may be. We can, the Mario Brothers Legend of Zelda dual pack cereal from the 80s, whatever it can be.
Chex Quest.
Chex Quest. No, that's a video game inspired by a cereal, not the other way around. But could you imagine if Chex as a cereal existed because Chex Quest had come out first?
What a wacky turn of events that would be. Some alternate timeline.
But, our favorite things throughout our lives or currently enjoying that are inspired by games. So, Alex, why don't you kick us off?
All right. So, I really like physical objects. I've always been like this. I've always liked toys. Controllers I find fascinating. The actual physical object of a video game console has been a favorite thing of mine ever since I was little. If you hand me a Game Boy, I can probably tell you what that Game Boy is without looking at it. I can tell you the model and based on the general size and feel of the thing. But when I was a kid, gaming collectibles were not easy to find in rural West Virginia, especially in, the 1990s. And so the fact that Amiibo exists is fairly affordable and high quality statues for all of my favorite Nintendo characters, I am like a kid in a candy store. I haven't added to this collection in forever since moving to Minnesota, but I still have a lot of these Amiibos that I collected throughout when they first came out. I used to work at a GameStop and I would get them. I would basically just be like, dibs, this one's mine. We're not selling that one. But I picked up a couple new ones recently because they're still putting out the Smash Brothers ones because, there's 85 characters in that freaking game. So I have a Sephiroth now and a Kazuya.
Very cool.
And the Sephiroth is sick. This was $15, and that is a high quality statue that I can also use for something. I don't know. They're awesome desk ornaments. I love that kind of thing.
That's sick.
That's pretty sweet.
I think I've given you a Monster Hunter one too.
Yeah, you had gifted me one
for Christmas.
Maybe a couple. I've definitely at the Banjo-Kazooie one. I remember picking up within the last couple years, but
yeah, that's
I probably own close to 60 of these things. I love them.
Very cool. What about you, Zach?
So one of my favorite gaming inspired things are heads-up displays. So I just bought this vehicle, but the vehicle I was actually trying to get instead of this one would have had a heads-up display for like my speedometer, my RPMs, and like my direction facing time, all of those things in my windshield.
You're talking about like in your windshield?
In my windshield. So
one of those like projecty things?
Kind of, yeah. So it would have basically like popped up a heads-up display on my glass, and I would never have to look away from the road really to see what I was doing.
Wild. I don't know
these
if
are really cool.
I don't know. Like, it's cool in concept. I would have to see it in person and drive with it to see whether or not I would actually like it. It sort of seems like I might not. But initially I thought you were talking about, like, it's common in cars now to have big screens built into the dashboards for like all of your interface. And I thought you were going to say that people or some cars or people are modding custom heads-up displays for those. I had no idea that you were going to be digging into like car manufacturers hologramming
like stock displays.
Yeah, into the windshield.
Yeah,
That's
no,
sick.
It's great. And I mean, if being able to do that, it'd be purely digital, so you wouldn't have an analog anything. But and it would free up dash space essentially, so you wouldn't have to have those instruments. You could have something else there. But
do you know what this would probably help? Like, you know how when you're driving at night and your dashboard is like just bright enough and you can't turn it down like all the way because you need to see your stuff? That could potentially fix that.
Yeah, because I mean, it's from what I understand, it's not a bright light. It just like during your daytime, it like gets a little brighter to be able to see against the road. And I don't know if you can change colors because I mean, I never got my hands on it, so I never played with it physically. But like all the stuff I've watched on them in the model of vehicles I was looking at was pretty cool. It was really non-intrusive. It stayed low. It didn't get up in your vision.
That absolutely feels like something that was inspired by a video game too.
Yeah, and then I mean,
like, there's no doubt in my mind.
Then you get into other heads-up display things, like Google Glass failed, but it could have absolutely given you a very cool. My glasses have a heads-up display to tell me about cool stuff going on, what direction I'm walking, like the thing I'm listening to, the person I'm on a call with.
My health bar.
Yeah. So what I've been reading is it's not dead though. They're still working on it. It's just their initial rollout, it wasn't ready. Like, it didn't function. But I was on Reddit and someone was talking about how they are a tester for Google Glass and they receive updates on it, and they, as a hard of hearing person, traveled to another country with these glasses, and the glasses received the other language and then heads-up displayed subtitles into their glasses for them. So took in the language, translated it, and they were able to communicate in another country in another language, which is just mind-blowing. And, as someone who's hard of hearing, they would really value that in everyday life. If life just had subtitles, things like invasive cochlear implants, you wouldn't need to get those types of surgeries as much because you'd be able to just communicate. Because one person, if two people have it, their glasses could translate ASL into subtitles and English into subtitles. And they would just be able to talk to each other in their native language. Which is just a wild, like
that's some sci-fi
it truly
is what that is.
It's truly like breaking the barrier of like starting towards universal language, right? That's really, really cool. But yeah, like it's definitely not like in the market yet, but they're still like working on it. And there's definitely things in that I think are like not just video game inspired, but all the way back to the start of science fiction writing.
Yeah, you get into Star Trek predicting everything.
Right.
What's your favorite heads-up display then, Zach?
Or
user interface in a game or whatever?
Shit, there's a lot of them that I like. There's a lot that I don't like. I gotta say, I guess I like a lot of the way Smites is set up, and it's evolved into a lot of different things, but I also really like Borderlands. In particular, because Borderlands makes it feel less like it's information there and more like it is your heads-up display in your player character's helmet.
Oh, yeah.
Or in their person in some shape or form, because as you take damage in some things, it'll get a little shake or flicker in some senses, which makes it fun for me. It's not overly invasive. It stays kind of floaty off to its side, out of your peripheral, so you have to glance at it to see what's going on. but it's one of the more comfortable looking ones for me to use.
This might already be on the market, but you know where this type of technology would be really cool? Motorcycle helmets. The inside of your head protection being just displayed, your screen. Speed and indicators telling you if there's cars on either coming up beside you.
That probably exists.
I have no idea.
It sounds expensive.
It sounds expensive.
I'm sure that there's some form of it, because we have smart bumpers and stuff now that tell you when you're backing up. You got your backup cam. Yeah. Those things tell you all those things going on.
Right.
Even Gina's Subaru has the little indicator both on the mirror and on the heads up dash. If somebody's passing you, it would be hey, there's a car next to you.
Yeah.
Beware.
Yeah. Show you that light for your blind spot. I love it.
I'm still impressed by backup cameras.
Yeah, I jumped from a fucking 09 Civic to a fucking 2022 Sentra, mid-model Sentra with a bunch of fucking bells and whistles. So I have a giant screen, backup cameras, things screaming at me about stuff in my blind spot. And I'm like, okay.
I went from an 04 Impala to a 2016 Camry.
I'm in a Nissan Versa Note. It has almost no bells and whistles. But it doesn't need bells and whistles because it's so small that...
that thing fits anywhere you put it, I swear. Joe has the smallest vehicle.
It's hilarious.
When he brought it home, after he bought it up, I was like, this is what you got? Joe, you're bigger than I am. This is a clown car.
But...
he's like, no, get in it. It's great.
the 32 to 40 miles to gallon makes it worth it. And I can park it pretty much anywhere.
Mm-hmm. That's a huge benefit. You just stick it where it fits.
Just
whatever.
Yeah. So that's my thing. I gotta say, HUDs I think are the best thing that came from gaming in general.
Sweet.
Cool.
So I'm a big tabletop gamer, particularly if anything's cooperative based or cooperative / competitive based, where you're working together but you're still trying to get the the highest score out of the players and things. And there's been a trend of turning video games into board games. So there's a Horizon board game, there's a Fallout board game, there's Dark Souls has a
Street Fighter.
Yeah. All of these video game properties are being translated into board games. I don't know how many of them are actually fun or good, but for me personally, the Bloodborne board game is so good. It's very fun. It sort of evokes that challenge and horror that you feel when playing Bloodborne. The first time I played the game, someone died on the first round because we were still just learning and figuring out how things hit. And so he's like, oh, I'll hit it a couple times and do this. And because he stayed, when it whacked back, oh, you're dead. And it's got some really cool minis that came with it that I use for my Curse of Strahd campaign all the time. Which is just really perfect theming of gothic horror. So it's just I'd had my eye on that game for a long time, and then finally one of my friends found a copy. It's kind of expensive, and so texted a bunch of our mutual friends, be like, hey, I want to pick this up for Joe. If you send me $20, we can split the cost, and I'll go in on a big gift for him. And so my buddy Zach did that for me and surprised me with it with my birthday last year. Haven't played it as much as I would like, but it's definitely a lot of fun.
It's one that I've been meaning to play with you because out of all the games to board game properties, I'm not much into tabletop. I just don't have the time. I cannot get into another thing that's that expansive and that big.
I love the social
dabble
aspect.
A little bit in cards. A little bit.
For me, it's a big, just my social outlet. Video games are my me time. I tend to play video games to get away from people.
I get that. I've always been a single player person.
And board games is I'm going to go out and do this activity with my friends and do this thing. And that's expanded, of course, into Dungeons and Dragons, getting together with friends or with my family to paint miniatures. And so, yeah, video games being converted into board games, and specifically the Bloodborne board game is my first pick. Back to you.
Bloodborne is
Alex.
The ultimate theme, man. I feel and if you say, "Hey, this is kind of like Bloodborne," people immediately pay attention.
They're huh?
Because there's something about that Victorian, Gothic, sci-fi background that is just awesome.
And it's funny that I wanted this game so much, considering I've never actually finished Bloodborne.
Me either.
But by God, I love it. Me and Zach tried real hard to beat Bloodborne, and got close, but still, that's a hard game.
It is
a hard game. All right, back to you, Alex. What's next?
But speaking of ways to make Bloodborne more accessible, hackers are doing it in some capacity, like have made it 60 FPS, for example. So I am really appreciative of what people do after a game has been released. This is more prominent in like, the NES, the Game Boy, things that people have developed tools to go in and modify or put on like a physical cartridge in some capacity. Like there's so many different ways to do this. But I love that stuff, man. If there's like a new Dreamcast game or somebody's taken levels and made new levels in Mario 64, that is the coolest thing to me. And oftentimes what they do is they take the original ideas found in those games that are just so brilliant and either spin them on their heads or push it to its limits. This is how we ended up with things like Mario Maker, which is an incredible product. But I just absolutely adore these kind of things. And not only that, but it also just makes the games a little easier to get a hold of. There's hacks that will put it in English, for example. There's hacks that will make the Earthbound inventory more appealing. There's all sorts of little things you can do. Former contributor to our website, Senna, just created a fan hack for, I think, one of the Ninja Gaidens into his native language. And so there's a lot of people doing this, and it's like feasible for these very small teams to do these really cool things with old video games. And I just think that's super cool.
Keeping it alive.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Zach, what about you? What's next?
For me, it'd be just like the stuff, like items, like game, like things that are designed in games that people have emulated in real life. For one, be like the concept of like the med pack. Like you have your games, like that was their healing thing. Like you sat down, you took the med pack, you were good to go. Like they've like limited. In a much more limited, like it's not gonna like you're gonna sit down and hit yourself with a syringe and be back to full health on the battlefield or anything like that. But they have like so much higher sophisticated things that they put into these like med packs that you can like pop out and be like, oh, I've got a hole in my arm. I can stick myself with this thing and I will not bleed anymore. And now I can go actually take care of myself. Like a kind of instant stabilizer in some limited capacity depending on the situation. Lots of situational like could be good, bad, or things like, fantasy swords, like fantasy gun designs, like those sort of things that have gone from being like just like something that only existed in games to people having made in real life.
3D printing has aided in that a lot. Like there's all sorts of people making armor and weaponry and stuff from games to bring them like physically into the world for the first time.
Yeah, and those are fantastic. God, 3D printing people are the fucking jam.
I envy them, but I do not envy their budgets.
Important to note, we are not medical professionals, so do not take any medical advice from us. Do not try to fix your broken arm with a syringe that you just found.
Or military professionals in any regard.
No, not at all. But seeing some of those things are pretty cool. Because, what is it, the XM25 grenade launcher or some shit?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was designed with the idea, from late 90s, early 2000 games where they had like, games were switching it up, giving you like weird things in there where you had like different kind of grenades or you could program your grenade to do something weird. Now the grenade launcher itself can take pre-programmed grenades to do a launch in different capacities. So instead of it just being like I'm lobbing a grenade at you, like it's gonna, either high impact or bounce around and then fragment, like you can set it to fragment it 50 yards out and blow up over a target and rain shrapnel down, for example, like be like the best corner case like gamer mind like example, things like that they didn't have before those things came out. Maybe they did and it was in just super secret shit, but
sure, potentially,
but timing makes it look like it came out afterwards.
Did you ever watch that Future Weapons show?
Maybe
on like the Discovery Channel where he's like
he
would show up
never watched
and bring out like various types of weaponry and armor and stuff. I always thought that felt like taking ideas from video games and turning them real, because it feels like something in A Perfect Dark, right? Like they have guns that'll the whole action will like pivot around a corner and you can like look through a camera and still hit targets.
That I think they've done.
That's crazy.
Like in real life, I think they've done that in real life. Guns that will.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. That feels like a video game to me.
Oh yeah, okay. Or even like the concept of like drones,
true,
being like a third-person camera. in terms of controlling and flying around and getting a different perspective on an
Xbox controllers
environment.
were very prominent in military use, I think, for drones for a while. Like bomb deactivating robots, drones, all sorts of stuff.
I have a weird, like, semi-tangent that's kind of connected to this.
Okay.
So
go on.
For a while I was looking at like random job openings and stuff, like what kind of things that you could find with like a gamer skill set. Weirdly enough, drone pilots, the connection to it. Second thing is a flight controller for actual like airports and shit, because they want people who have that reaction time and have spent time being able to just make those very direct decisions with what's in front of them, being able to like read and like do stuff side to side. But you needed to be under like 32 or something, like for their like credentials. But that aside, is most of the air traffic controllers, like in the last couple of years, retired. They were like basically like you either retired out or you had just gotten too old to be able to do that thing that needed your like immediate like full attention real time, like doing these things. And
you have to have a certain reaction time, and I guess they find that a lot of people who are into games probably have that in spades.
Yeah, and that's just, it's not even like a skill that they like hard developed. It was just part of their natural thing, so they could take that and polish it up even further in this thing. So it was an awesome, like, now your job is coming from your skill set in games.
Very cool. And I think there was like a military server made out of PlayStation 3s.
Yeah, I remember that story.
2008 or something like that, which is kind of
like 100 PS3s or something. They strapped and bolted together and turned it into a weapon server or something.
Yeah, I don't know what it was calculating, but it was helping with something that they were using, and it was because it was, for their cost, a fairly cost-effective processing unit that you could get a team of them together versus triple the cost for a supercomputer dedicated to doing the same thing. And
why not?
But for my next one, I'm realizing I can kind of combine the two of these together into one. But there's a specific like type of gaming literature that I think all kind of comes together about like the coverage and reviewing of games, or like previews of games, or just like things about games in general. But like gaming magazines and cheat code books were like two of some of my favorite video game inspired things throughout my life, particularly through like the late 90s through the mid 2000s, going to like your school's like book fair and picking up that year's video game secrets and cheat codes,
and it was always giant font.
Yeah, and then the book's like weirdly tall, and narrow.
It was a very strange format.
But it was just full of like cheat codes from all sorts of different video games, and like I could never really tell the rhyme or reason as to what video games they included, because it would be like a bunch of PS1 games, one Nintendo game, and then like a Sega game, and then like a few Dreamcast games, and then like 100 GameCube games, or whatever they decided to just like pump out that year. But then also I had a subscription to PlayStation Magazine in high school that came with the demo discs, or at least I'm pretty sure that was PlayStation Magazine. But you'd get like demos.
Either that or PSX. Either way, it was PlayStation themed.
Yeah, and so you would get these like monthly demo discs of games that were coming out, and there are like, I distinctly remember playing some games that never came out, or builds of games that were completely changed and like updated by the time they got full release. But I remember getting like the demo disc for Kingdom Hearts 2 and being just like playing that like 30 minutes over and over and over again, hyping myself up for like the next game. And then like reading. That
was a very useful tool for those of us who lived in rural areas and didn't have access to the internet nearly as much. Like that was a big deal for me to have. It truly was.
And then like the E3 coverage that would come in those magazines after, like I feel like the news cycle and like particularly print media leading up to like the announcement of the PlayStation 3 was some of the most exciting and wild West almost journalism of just like predictions and like nonsense, like this banana controller is
we thought for a long time that the Wii was going to be able to, it was called the Nintendo Revolution, and it was going to play all the Nintendo games. And I'm like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. I want one.
Yeah.
And then turns out it didn't.
But it was like
the exact opposite. And I was like, oh no.
2005, 2006 news cycle, like journalism for video games was very exciting to read and like be a part of as it was happening. It's sort of like trying to explain to someone why Twitch plays Pokemon was exciting and cool to someone now. You really had to be there and be a part of it for it to be like an exciting thing. Like I remember like at school crowding around a computer because our teacher gave us permission to load up the press conferences for the like Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony that 2006 E3. And like it's like tiny little
like
video
480p.
like you got the whole screen, but only like 2 inches of it is video at all. And just like like just getting so excited and pumped about this like news cycle. But yeah, like always getting those magazines and like
I think we're gonna go back to that, honestly. Like I think the news cycles right now are too quick. People are inundated with information, and I mean obviously we've seen several like investors pull out money in some of these digital only platforms. I think that print is going to get a boost potentially, or at least more meaningful journalism.
I think we're going to
start. People are plumb tired of bullshit content.
Well, how many updates in video games happen because of a leak? And it just kind of ruins the hype. And like thinking about like Microsoft recently had their big announcement thing, and they like shadow dropped a game that people are loving. I don't remember what the name of it was.
Hi-Fi Rush.
Yes.
It's by Tango Gameworks, the people who did Evil Within and Ghostwire Tokyo. So that has some of the like classic Resident Evil talent on it.
Yeah.
And they made this sick like musical beat 'em up thing that's really cool. I haven't played it yet, but it looks really good.
Yeah, I remember when we were talking about that. It was so fucking weird to hear those two things put together.
Yeah, and then it's like people have been comparing it to I think Sunset Overdrive.
Yeah.
Like gameplay wise and even like visual flair. Like it kind of has that attitude. And the fact that they were able to like keep like no one knew that was coming. It like that's exciting. And if there was just a better just like news flow, I think people would get hyped about video game news announcements again.
Well, not only because the release was just available in people's hands all at once. Everybody knew about it at the same time, basically. Some of the bigger journalists might have had like an hour ahead of time or something, but regardless, like as soon as that came out, people were playing it and they immediately wanted to know what this thing was. So anybody getting interviews, any of the developers who had the time or the ability to speak about the game was immediately interesting and fascinating.
Yeah,
it's just another approach to doing games messaging.
We're in a weird place too, where it's hard to get excited about a new trailer dropping or a preview because for the bigger developers, they might not finish it because they realize it might not make enough money. And for the smaller developers, it might not get finished because the company goes under.
Or it could take several years. It's the time that you announce a game is very important in any capacity.
And it sort of seems like the like it's available today has been a very successful model for some game drops because people are like, well, I'm gonna go play it now.
Those are the ones that can kind of speak and stand on themselves. Like there's like me working in PR, there's not any extra work that I would have to do for something like Hi-Fi Rush. I send a journalist a trailer and they go, ooh, I want that. And that's about it, right? Meanwhile, I have some games where I have to break down into nuance of like, no, the reason that you might want this is because of these comparisons and these reasons and, you know, this story from the developers. We're all the time trying to figure out just ways to have people be interested in things. That's hard. That's a whole job in itself.
Definitely.
And so the fact that Hi-Fi Rush could just speak for itself, like that's the type of game you want to shadow drop.
For sure. And then I'll just quickly throw in my final gaming-inspired thing. I've got a couple of Legend of Zelda pillowcases. I love them. They're great. They don't match the decor of our bedroom at all, but they're mine. I know that's my pillow because it's got, like, Skyward Sword imagery on it, and it's cool. And it sort of as an adult, it sort of reminds me of, like, getting, like, Mario bed sheets. Or, like, something like Jurassic Park bed
I had a
sheets.
Dragon Ball Z blanket that I adored. That was a great blanket.
Your Pikachu comforter. So, but yeah, that's my final thing. Alex, do you have anything more to add?
I'm generally like loving the fact that video games are becoming like more merchandisable now. I mean, we see this even outside of things like Amiibo. Like there's Sonic the Hedgehog Lego kits, and there's
I was about to say I'm shocked you didn't mention
like Kratos,
your Nintendo Lego set.
I'm digging those. Like there's been several, and I think that things like the Mario movie is really going to elevate that. But I think just the physical merchandising of video games is like cooler now than it's ever been.
Yeah, good old Chris Pratt Mario putting the games in the people's hands.
I just want Jack Black to get an award for being Bowser.
That would be amazing. How about you, Zach? Anything to wrap up?
From our stuff, our main topic? Not really. Those are the two big things that I'm really excited about.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end. Zach, why don't you close us out, my good friend?
All right. Which things are we adding into the closeout now, and which are we not?
Just saying, thanks for listening.
Tell people where to find us.
Stay cool, play games.
Most things are in the
eat a
in
chicken.
The description anyways.
Yeah.
Eat a chicken.
We're gonna be the chicken guy who eats a fucking rotisserie for 40 days.
Oh God, I don't think I could.
Did y'all read that stuff?
Like a whole one? Like a whole
chicken?
A whole chicken every day.
He put like flyers. I don't remember what fucking town it was.
I guess
He put
if
flyers up and he did it. He ate a whole ass rotisserie chicken every single day for 40 days. And he just...
You know what I love about...
too many chickens.
You know what I love the most about this story? Is the confidence to put up flyers about it. To be like, I'm going to eat a chicken every day. And then like to tell people about it. Not social media. He could have just posted it on Facebook. But no, he freaking made flyers to advertise eating a chicken every day.
Yeah, and
he like showed up on the beach or something and ate a chicken, and people watched.
Yeah, people just watched. In his last one, he was like on a big pier, like dock. He got up on the chair or table at the end. He's like, you know what? He's like, I'm just a guy. He was like, I ate chicken. I said I was going to. I did it. He was like, I'm not that special. He's like, I'm not a god. He's like, thanks for watching me eat chicken. Just like real nonchalant. Was just like, thanks.
Man,
there's something
what an opportunity
about that.
I hope he sees this as like an opportunity to be like, I'm bringing back Chicken Month, and like it's like some sort of like charity event to like generate money for some worthy cause. Like he's just gonna like, well, I'm just gonna eat these chickens anyway. So if you want to watch me eat chicken, it's $5, and all the money goes towards like, I don't know,
like smart farming or free range chicken farms or
tofu
development or
buying
something.
buying local farmers or something.
Yeah. There's a surplus of chickens. I'm going to put a dent in that.
All right. Well, we could probably cut this whole sidetrack chicken convo.
No, the chicken thing stay.
All right, fine.
Thank you for listening to the Forever Classic Podcast. It's been real.
Come
Check
here
us out
for
at
your premium chicken eating
foreverclassicgames.com.
content.
This is what happens. This is what people sign up for. They come for the like cool opinions of people who are, in the space, but they stay
for the random shit we remember.
And the general tomfoolery. Everybody has their own particular brand, and maybe we're yours. We appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll do it. Goodbye.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye-bye now.